In this video, I'm going to talk to you about point label styles and how they're used. We've already talked about point marker style, which controls the visibility and the way that the point itself is displayed. The point label style controls the way the information or the label of the point is displayed and what information is displayed by it. So I'm going to start by creating a new point label style. I'm going to go use my tool space, the settings tab. And we're talking about points, so I'm going to expand the points. Here's where we would go for the marker style like we've done previously, but in this case I'm wanting to create a label style. So I'm going to expand those, take a look. You can see there are already several label styles available, and it's a good practice to follow suit what's shown here, in that your point label style names should be reflective to what they're actually displaying to kind of help you know when to apply that. So I'm going to follow suit with that. To create my new label style that I'm going to create is I'm going to right mouse click and select new, and I'm going to label my new point style PENZ. So these are abbreviations, and the P stands for the point number, the E stands for the elevation, I'm sorry, not the elevation, but the easting, number of feet east of an origin. The N stands for the northing value, number of feet north of an origin, and the Z stands for the elevation. So you might see this type of abbreviation when transferring points to and from a total station or a data collector in a raw data format. So these abbreviations are good to understand. If I look through these tabs, I'm going to go to the General tab. The General tab controls the type of fonts or the size of the label itself, and it's controlling that text font and the size through the text style. So if you need to create a particular font on your labels, then you need to create that text style and apply that text style to this label. So that's your tip for your assignment. Make sure that you create the text style that you need first using the text style manager, and then apply that text style to this label here by changing that. So here we've got a few text styles available. We're going to stick with the standard for this example, and you want to make sure that the visibility is turned to true. If it's turned off, then you can't see the labels at all. So make sure that's true. The next part is the Layout tab, and this is where the bulk of the work is done. By default, when we selected new label style, 3 bits of information came in about the point number, the point elevation, and the point description. So whenever this component is selected here, these properties in this palette below are all pertaining to that selected component. I'm going to remove the elevation and its child, and I'm going to remove the description. So now all I'm left with is the part number, and you can see by the preview over here that the part number is directly above the point, which the X represents the point, and I'd kind of like to see those kicked out to the right side of the point. So I'm going to make some adjustments here. So right now the point number is anchored to the feature, which is the point, and it says the top left. So I'm going to actually leave that at the top left, but instead of the bottom left of the text, I'm going to make that the top right. Top left, bottom. I'm going to make this top right over there. And I'm pretty happy with the bottom left, because that's going to kind of keep it in line with that point there. And so I'm going to now create the other components that I need. So I'm going to start. So to add information to your label, you can add more text, you can add a line, or you can add a block, a drawing block. So I'm going to add more label. I'm going to rename that to be easting. And instead of it being labeled to the feature, I'm going to actually label it to, or anchor it to, my point number. I don't want the top left to be anchored to my point number. I want the bottom left, and I don't want them to be anchored by the middle center. I actually want it to be anchored by the top left. So we've got everything going down in a straight line there. Looks good. I don't want this to say label text, so under the text and contents here, I'm going to change that. I'm going to remove the label text. I'm going to add a capital E to stand for easting. And I'm going to select the easting property. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the precision to 1 decimal place. And I use this arrow to push that information into my label. When I pick OK, you can see the easting value is now added into my label. I'm going to repeat that same process to include the northing value. So I add a new line of text, rename it, anchor it to my easting, I want this to be so we're going to anchor it to the easting using a bottom left anchor point and the top left attachment. What this means is that the top left of my new label is at the bottom left of my easting value. So, don't let this frustrate you. Keep working at it until you understand it and you get the labels to appear like you want. Remember, these CAD software systems work for you. You don't work for it. So make sure that you force them to do what you want them to do. On the contents here, we're going to change that to not say label text, but to say northing. So I'm going to change that with a capital N, select the northing property, adjust the precision. And so on your projects that you work throughout the semester, just make your precision match the precision that's given to you in the problem. So keep that in mind as you're creating these labels. So now we have the point number, we have the easting, we have the northing, and now we're going to add the elevation. So again, another line of text. I'm going to rename it. It's not going to be anchored to the feature, but it's going to be anchored to northing. And I want the top left anchored to the bottom left. Okay, and I don't want it to say label text. I'm going to adjust that. Take the label text out. Select the point elevation property. Adjust the precision. Place it into the label. Maybe I want to put a little offset or adjust it down just a little bit. So I can use a little Y offset to move the elevation down, maybe a little bit, put a little space there. And perhaps I want to put a box around the elevation. So I could go into the border, and the border type is set to rectangular, but notice that the border visibility is set to false. So I'm going to change that to true, and you can see that the box is placed around that. Okay, so we've got our label elements the way we like, and so I'm going to go ahead and just look through these other two tabs real quickly. The drag state, that's going to be how this appears if you actually select on this label and move it away from the point. So this, if you're not pleased with what's happening when you drag your layer or drag your label, you're going to want to address these properties in this palette. The summary is just simply a review of all the information, so you can expand each one of the components of the label, how it behaves in a drag state. So it's just all of these bits of information listed in the summary here. So I'm happy with the way my label is set up now. I'm going to pick OK. I see the label shows up in my list, but nothing's changed in the drawing. The reason that nothing has changed in my drawing is that this label style is not being applied to any of the points. So the way that we apply these label styles, like we've already talked about with point groups, is through the use of point groups. So if I look at my prospector tab and expand my point groups, see there's one point group. It's called all points. So I'm going to adjust the properties of that point group, and you notice there are no point markers, there are no point labels. I'm just going to change it to add my point label that I just created. Now this is all the points in the entire drawing, so when I pick OK here, it's going to get quite busy with a great deal of point labels. So we obviously wouldn't want to do this for for our exercise or for a real project, but you want to apply those to a group of points that are separated for purpose. So here you can see the results of our label. We've got the point number, we've got the easting value, we've got the northing value, and we have the elevation in a box. So that's how you would create your point styles. Later on, you'll have an assignment to create line labels. So that's under the general and label styles here. So you create line or curve labels using those similar tools. It all works. It works basically the same. So once you understand it here, it applies elsewhere in all the other label style managers. So I hope this gets you pointed in the right direction. If you have any questions, please give me a call or send me an email. Thanks.